It's countdown time. Hello, everybody, and it's Ray here again, and it's time to get the numbers 80 through 71 on the countdown. This grouping is going to feature some small games and some really large games. So here we go. Number 80 is a little game called No Thanks, and this is really a game where you are getting cards which are bad for points, but you have these little chips here, and so anytime it's your turn, you can get rid of one of these chips and have the next person. No thanks, I don't want this card, you can take it. The chips are worth victory points off your score. You don't want to score points, so they count off your score at the end of the game. And so the thing is, you can't just refuse to take cards forever because you'll run out of chips. The saving grace is if you collect cards that are consecutively numbered, then you only score points for the lowest such number. So it gets to be a push and shove of, do I want to take this card? Oh, you've already got the card that's next to that, so this isn't going to be any negative points to you, and I'm giving you a chip for it. It makes for some great quick decisions. It's light, but it's not a lightweight game. It's No Thanks, my number 80. Number 79 is a classic game. It's not as classic as you might think from Reiner Knizia. It's Palazzo. This is a dual sort of action set collecting game where you're collecting money to bid to buy pieces of palazzos or houses or palaces, depending on your translation, and you're collecting different types of materials. But the idea is you want to make as many of these palazzos as you can. However, there's different levels, so there's a ground floor, second floor. You can't go too far up, so if you start with a third floor building, then that's going to be too high of a number, because then you only put a 4 or 5 on top of that. So you want to get those things that are started closer to the bedrock so you can finish these things. So obviously you want to try to get buildings that have all 5 levels in it, but that's easier said than done. I was looking through this, having to remind myself of it. I was looking back and I'm like, I want to play this right now. It is an oldie but a goodie, only 2005. It's my number 79, Palazzo. Number 78 is a decidedly much larger game, and this is Dark Hen Colonia. This is this is going to be a 2-hour experience, but you're controlling a large family in Italy back in the 1300s. You get a pile of these tokens, so some of them you're going to be sending to represent your family's interest in the town council and approve laws. Some of them you're going to be sending off to get resources to then turn into goods, which then you'll be able to sell off. Some of those people will take them to sell them off to get money that you'll turn into family heirlooms and religious relics that actually score you points at the end of the game. So yes, you're going from resources to making goods to selling goods to then finally getting points. It is an immersive experience, but I think the system works well. You just have to be patient with it. It's it's Colonia, and it's my number 78. Number 77 is also another weighty game, maybe not in as large of a box, but it's Ore and Labore. This is Hugh Rosenberg's next entry, not officially part of his Harvest trilogy, but it comes after Le Havre, and it was inspired by Le Havre, where you have offer spaces, and each space piles up tokens of a different type of resource. Well, he took those piles and turned them into resource wheels with little tokens, so then he could actually play a little bit of mechanics off the tokens, where you can move them with other cards in this game, and it actually makes it a much more cleaner, nicer setup. And he ended up using this mechanic again for other games, but this was the first one that really used it. And this is also one of the first games that really made solo play very much a desirable portion if you have a puzzle worker placement type game like this. It really kind of made it mainstream. It also has a building of a landscape where you're trying to put things just exactly together. There is a ton of points to be had. Point salad du jour right here. It's a fabulous game. You have to have the patience for it. It definitely has the labor in the Labore part. But this is Ora and Labore. This is my number 77. My number 76 is so big, I think I'm going to have to stand up to show you guys. My number 76 is The game goes back to 1992, and it's a massive extrasensory game called the Vega Virus. This is a game that features a gigantic computer virus. It's trying to take over a space station that is destined to bring peace and prosperity to the entire world. If this computer virus takes over the station, then all hope is lost. And so you represent one of 4 different factions, country groups / corporations trying to take down this virus. You have to go through this massive space station, as you see here, and find the pieces that you need to actually disarm this computer virus. All the time is being kept by this computer virus, so he has only 30 minutes or 20 minutes to take over the station. So you're trying to work together, but yet competitively. You want to be the one that takes down the virus. So there was actually even player versus player combat in this game. You could shoot other people and try to keep them from getting the pieces and solving the puzzle first. This game also features some of the best 90s voice acting that can go on to a microchip. Something that sounds a lot like this.
You human scum!
Oh yeah. I had to scrape off a lot of battery acid to get that clip, and it was well worth it. This just has a special place in my heart. This even has solo play in it. Back in 1992, before we even thought of anything like that being something that is worthwhile. The folks at Board Game Replay found their copy, and I believe they're getting ready to do a trial. I could do even a solo run of this, 10-minute solo run. I think we could make it work. If it's interesting to you all out there, send me a note. We can try to put something on the channel for this. That's the Vega Virus, my number 76. So following up that entry, by number 75, is Fifth Avenue. This is a game Wilco Mans. It's an area control game plus auction mechanic game where you're sometimes collecting cards, you're bidding out cards to try to get your spots of building on the board. You're also trying to get certain things next to each other, so the more of a certain type of business that you can get on the board next to each other, the more points you score if you have your skyscrapers next to it. This is it's a fun sort of interaction game for me. It didn't get a lot of publicity. It's a little bit underrated. This is Fifth Avenue, my number 75. Number 74 is a tiny game, but a PAX. It does what it does well. This is Straw. This is a game, literally, you are stacking things on a camel, and the camel can carry 50 pounds worth of items. The idea is you don't want to be the person who throws something onto the camel that breaks the camel's back. If you do that, you lose the round, and you play for points. However, there is a straw that is floating around, and so if you actually put the straw that breaks the camel's back, you shoot the moon. You don't lose, everybody else loses, and you score points instead. And so that's the only time you can play that card. It's actually a surprisingly fun game. You'd think this would be silly, but it's actually a surprisingly fun game where you're adding and subtracting to 50. There's flying carpets that are floating around in it, so sometimes there's times when the camel's levitating off the ground at -5 or 7. Some variants people proposed say no, you can never ever float off the ground, but technically you can. Anyway, it's a fun game, especially if you ever get the chance to play for money, which they had a bounty hunter tournament at Gen Con one of these years. That's a fun time when you can play this game for actual cash prizes. But this is Straw. This is my number 74. Number 73 is a game that has gotten more than its fair share of attention. This is Small World. It's a fun, luring, sort of tile cancel out game where you have your race, you put them out there, and you can overpower other people's races by having 2 more than the number of tokens that they have, and you move those off the board. The problem is, as you continue to spread yourself out across the board, you get fewer tokens. Your race has a limited number of tokens, so very few race combinations have a way to get more tokens. Not only do you have a race, you also have a class, so it makes the game much more replayable because you have all these combinations of different powers with different races, and also has your scoring some points here or there for other bonuses that you can have. It's a fun game. It has different maps. Sometimes, though, it can get to be, it is what it is. It has some king making, I don't want to say issues, but it has that possibility in different setups. Still, it's a fun, lighthearted game, especially with a cute theme where you're mixing up all these different jobs and races. It's Small World. That's my number 73. 72 is a game that by a designer that's more well known. This is London, and this actually doesn't. It gets kind of an unfair treatment because it has maybe a suboptimal setup for like 2 players, but for 3 players and 4 players, this game really shines. It's a card tableau game where you're actually building up buildings. You have to give up cards of a particular color in order to build new cards. However, you don't have too many card stacks, otherwise you start getting disease, and so you can try to play to mitigate that as much as possible versus scoring points. It has different ways of going about it, and so you run through the deck. You're also building up train stations, starting of the underground in London during this time after their great fires. So it's a card driven game. It's a tableau game, and it often gets overlooked, and it's well worth your time as far as I'm concerned. It's London. It's my number 72. 71, last one tonight, is Trains. This is the original Trains from AG, originally Japan brand. And this is a fixed pile deck building game. So like Dominion, you have the same cards that you start the whole game with. Everybody has access to them with a limited number. But the biggest thing about this is the board that comes with it, so that you're actually using your cards to set up routes between cities into special locations and trying to use your cards to work your goals on the board. And that really gives the game sort of a drive of, okay, this is where we're going and this is what I'm going to be doing. So it's not all about, okay, how can I get more victory point cards into my deck? No, you have to be using and playing the board. So if some people are rushing, you need to go with that. If people are holding back, then you can take a different tack. But again, it is a fixed pile game and can have times where a certain combination might have, this is the optimal one, either you took it or you didn't. That aside, it's a fun game. It's Trains, and it's my number 71. So that's another 10 down in the list. That's 30 down in total, and we're just starting to get started. These are good, and we haven't even gotten to some of the best ones. I hope you're enjoying these videos. If you want to find out more about what I'm reviewing, what I'm doing, you can follow me on Twitter at InstGameReview, right there for you. You can also subscribe to the channel. You can give us a thumbs up. Thank you for watching. God bless you, and we'll see you again next time.